Dnešný podcast ti prináša Technická univerzita vo Zvolene. Zvolenská technická univerzita je na Slovensku jedinečná vďaka svojmu zameraniu na les, drevo a ekológiu, no svoje si tam nájdeš, aj keď ťa zaujíma strojárstvo, ochrana pred požiarmi, dizajn alebo ekonómia. Štúdium je zároveň úzko prepojené s praxou a tak si získané skúsenosti môžeš vyskúšať priamo v teréne. Vo Zvolene sa nachádza univerzitný kampus s možnosťami ubytovania aj stravovania, ale hlavne moderné učebne a špecializované laboratória. Poloha mesta priamo v strede Slovenska zase poskytuje skvelé možnosti pre fanúšikov outdoorových aktivít. Jednoducho na Technickej univerzite vo Zvolene môžeš študovať priamo v objatí prírody. Viac o takmer 20 študijných programov i prihláškach sa dozvieš na stránke tuzvo.sk. Ešte raz, viac info nájdeš na tuzvo.sk.
Mental health. Health plays a very important role in everyone's professional and private life. When we congratulate someone on their birthday, we wish them luck and health, two significant elements in the real world. People usually don't realize the value of health, whether it is physical or mental health, until they have a problem. When we're healthy, we want to have everything. But if we're sick, we just want our health back. That's our only priority. To do everything that we love without limitations. Dear listeners, welcome to our podcast. Make yourselves comfortable and enjoy. When we want to stay fit, we usually go on a diet, limit eating sweets, and work out. It's quite difficult to take care of our physical health because it requires a strong will and belief. Of course, physical activities improve our mental state as well. But mental health is not recognized as often and clearly as our physical health. It is frequently overlooked in our society, and most of the time neglected by us. Our invisible psyche may cause huge problems if we ignore or postpone dealing with mental health issues. Even a mentally healthy individual can become a person with mental diseases requiring a long-term cure. Mental diseases are still treated with a big distance and negative opinions. They are stigmatized and seen as shameful, which is no different than it was in previous centuries. In the past, being a mentally ill person meant prison and horrible treatment. Mental disorders were often seen as demonic possession. The sick were locked up in asylums, and doctors tried different experiments, new medication, or electric shocks. They didn't know the methods, and many times they created even worse conditions for mentally ill people than before they came into the asylums. Psychology started to develop only in the 19th century when Wilhelm Wundt created a laboratory for experimental psychology. Other psychologists, like Sigmund Freud, started to be interested in sexuality and subconsciousness. Hysteria was a common mental issue for the 19th century woman, said to be caused by sexual frustration. The treatment was cruel, including binding and the usage of drugs. Fortunately, this attitude has been changing, and mentally ill people are usually placed into hospitals or facilities with a different attitude. Of course, aggressiveness and other dangerous attitudes are usually suppressed by medication, but nowadays the staff tries to spend their time with patients in a more effective manner. In milder cases of the disease, they can do some creative activities like embroidery, drawing, gardening, reading, or having group therapies. It's very important to maintain mental health, but it needs a lot of attention and care. A good work-life balance might be a perfect solution to stay healthy physically and mentally. You should talk about your feelings and try to change everything that you're not satisfied with. Self-care is necessary if you want to achieve mental balance. Finding time for activities that bring joy and pleasure might provide a better mental state. Eating your favorite food regularly, having a balanced diet, and enough hours of quality sleep are also important. Have a break when you need it. Take a nap or watch an episode of your favorite series. Whenever you feel stressed, do something that makes you calm and happy. Stress aggravates concentration and success at school, and this is why you should reduce stress using methods you are familiar with. There are days when everything seems impossible and bad. We're sad. We sometimes cry or just stare at the ceiling in our rooms. It is okay when our days look like this, but we need to remember that one bad day doesn't mean a bad life. We often say that we have depression, but depression is a long-term state, often associated with self-destruction, that needs to be treated professionally. Confusing these notions might lead to a misunderstanding. Each mental illness changes the behavior of the sick, affects the mood, and causes emotional storms. If it is serious and long-term, this disorder might change a person's daily life completely, because the ability to perform at school or work is no longer easy and possible. Mental disorders are often invisible and develop over time. The reason for their development might be genetics, stress, a consequence of a different disease, or a trauma. Anytime you or any of your friends spot mental problems or changes, don't hesitate to visit a doctor. It's the same as when you have a problem with your eyes. An ophthalmologist gives you advice and prescribes you eye drops or eye cream to heal your problems. Mental problems are more complicated and require longer diagnostics and a process to reveal the underlying cause. However, it is important not to neglect your mental health before it's too late. Who should you visit if you have any issues with mental health? If you said a psychologist, you are completely right. This might be a good first step for treatment, but it is important to admit that you can have a problem. Psychologists won't judge you and will listen to the thoughts and issues you're dealing with in your head. Every psychologist has a different method of therapy. However, the point is the same. Helping people and figuring out their internal world, organizing their lives, and leading a successful life. There are several types of psychologists. When you go to school, a school psychologist might help students solve problematic situations in school or at home. The psychologist tries to find the cause of the bad marks, changed behavior, or helps students deal with drugs, bullying, or mental health care. Clinical psychologists take care of their patients and lead them to make progress in difficult situations which they might get through. Other types of psychologists are forensic psychologists, applying psychological principles in legal aspects, and sports psychologists, who maximize the potential of teams or individuals, motivating them and making them focus more. Another level of treatment is provided by psychiatrists, who prescribe medicine, such as antidepressants. Patients are usually hospitalized in different facilities, hospitals, centers for nonstop treatment if the disorder is very serious. It is usually combined with therapy when patients talk about their feelings, express their thoughts and views on particular situations. Progress is very slow, and sometimes even when we think that someone has already overcome the disorder, it can become worse again in a moment. The most common mental health issues are anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, eating disorders, schizophrenia, or schizoaffective disorders. Each of them is dangerous and life-threatening. Be careful about anxiety caused by stress and the fear of upcoming situations. The symptoms are chest pain, a rapid heart rate, and palpitations. The unpleasant feeling when you can't stop worrying often causes panic attacks. This is the reason why you should know how to relieve stress and when it's time to take a break. Eating disorders usually appear in teenage years, when teenagers try to find themselves, their identity, and they experiment with their style. Teenagers want to be popular in their group, and since it is trendy to be skinny, anorexia or bulimia are eating disorders that are not connected only with over or under eating, but also with mental complexes and body dissatisfaction. Bipolar disorder is known as a manic depressive illness characterized by shifts of moods and energy, making it difficult for the person to function. The main symptoms are increased energy, euphoric mood, poor concentration, sleeplessness, and provocative behavior. It is curable only by psychotherapy and medications. On the other hand, schizophrenia is a chronic brain disorder affecting thinking, causing delusions, hallucinations, and a lack of motivation. There is no cure. Only medication and behavioral therapy can stabilize the mental illness. Due to the fast pace of modern society, mental health issues have been on the rise in recent years. Be aware of any changes in your behavior or the behavior of your friends or relatives. It is often hard to notice and admit mental issues, and if you have someone supportive who stands by your side in any circumstances, take his advice and visit the doctor. One meeting is worth a try. A professional will recommend the next steps to take, which will help you to overcome a difficult situation, not alone, but with help. Help is also available on several portals. In Slovakia, you can find it at IPCKO Bodeska, where online chatting with a volunteer might help you to mobilize your strength and solve problems. Don't neglect your mental health, and take care of it in the same way as your body. And if you want to learn more, just listen a little longer. Mental disorders have been pictured differently through time. Many books and movies tend to romanticize mental illness and make their heroes romantic freaks. However, most of the time they are full of obsession, jealousy, and violence. Sadness turns into something desirable, but the disorders depicted in fiction are completely different in reality. Teenagers and young people who are fans of such films might get confused and misunderstand the meaning of mental illnesses. Another portrayal of people with mental disorders is simply harmful. They're depicted as crazy people who aren't respected and taken seriously. The truth is a little different, and every individual with a mental disorder suffers from various symptoms. Very few are violent and aggressive towards others. They mostly have destructive tendencies only towards themselves. It is very hard to differentiate who is which type. Only professionals can help their relatives to treat them in the best way. Signs of suicidal behavior are something you should look out for, and if you or some of your loved ones are experiencing suicidal thought, don't hesitate to call a suicide prevention hotline that offers help in critical situations. Mental health is incredibly important, and we should take care of ourselves from many different perspectives. Cherish your body, cherish your soul and mind, and you will feel better and balanced. Take a break, breathe, meditate, and do what you love. Appreciate what you have, and enjoy everything that comes in the future. Looking forward to the next episode of our podcast might be a good start. Thank you very much for listening, and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Write a comment on YouTube, and tell your friends about us. See you next time.